So what if I told you that something you do online every single day, something you probably don't even think about, could technically make you a federal criminal? I know, it sounds like clickbait, but it's not. Today, we are diving deep into the shocking ways these ancient, outdated laws are clashing with our modern internet habits. And you'll see how your seemingly innocent clicks could land you in some very, very serious trouble. Just, think about your day so far. Did you text your Netflix password to a friend? Maybe log your cousin into your music account? Feels normal, right? Just a nice, simple thing to do. But here's the thing. In the eyes of the law, it might be anything but simple. And this is where it gets absolutely wild. On the one hand, you have this common, friendly gesture. On the other hand, it could be interpreted as breaking federal law. This is the insane gray area we're all living in online, where the rulebook was written decades ago, but the penalties? Oh, the penalties are very, very real. All right, let's kick things off with the biggest trap of them all, the whole idea of free content. Look, we all get it. Pirating is bad, but the conversation usually just stops right there. What people almost never talk about is the jaw-dropping, life-ruining financial penalty you could face for just one single file. So picture this. It's a Tuesday night, you find a movie you want to watch on a torrent site. It's just one file, one click. You download it. What's the worst that can happen, right? Maybe a warning email from your ISP? A small fine, maybe? Nope. The reality is so much worse. The worst that can happen is this: $150,000. And no, that is not a typo. That is the maximum statutory fine for downloading one single file. Let that sink in for a second. And look, this isn't some scare tactic I made up. This comes directly from the U.S. Copyright Office. They call it willful infringement, which is basically a fancy way of saying you knew what you were downloading was pirated. And if they can prove that, the damages can just explode up to that $150,000 number. But here's the absolute craziest part. That's per work. So every single song on an album, every episode in a TV season you download, each one is another potential six-figure lawsuit. Okay, if you thought the copyright fines were insane, this next law is genuinely creepy. It's called the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, the CFAA. The best way to think about it is like a ghost that's haunting the internet, a law written way back in the 80s to catch Cold War hackers that's now being twisted in ways no one could have ever predicted. The real power of the spooky law comes from this one incredibly vague phrase: exceeds authorized access. I mean, just look at the legal definition. It's a total mess. But what it boils down to is this: using a computer in a way you're not supposed to, even if you had permission to be on it in the first place. You can see the problem, right? Who gets to decide what not supposed to even means? So what does this exceeds authorized access stuff actually mean in the real world? Okay, brace yourself. Some courts have said it could be as simple as violating a website's terms of service, which means, yep, sharing your streaming password could technically be a federal crime. Even checking your personal email on your work computer, if that's against company policy, could potentially get you caught in this net. It's unbelievably broad. And the consequences are just terrifying. We're talking about a federal misdemeanor for a first offense. That can mean huge fines and up to a year in prison. And please, don't think this is just a hypothetical threat. This law has absolutely been used to prosecute people for doing things that most of us would think are just normal online behavior. Which leads us perfectly to the next piece of this scary puzzle. We now know that violating a website's terms of service could have massive consequences. But let's be real for a second. When was the last time you actually read one? The truly frightening part is, it doesn't matter if you have. You're agreeing to legally binding contracts every single day, sometimes with just one single click. You know, this whole question really came to a head in a landmarked case involving Uber. A customer tried to sue them, but Uber just pointed to their terms of service. The user shot back saying, "Hey, I never actually agreed to that." And that forced the courts to answer a huge question for our digital age. What does it actually mean to agree to something online? Well, the court's decision gave us this legal idea called a sign-in wrap agreement. And here's what it means. If a link to the terms of service is just visible somewhere on the sign-up screen, the simple act of clicking that sign-up button is legally the exact same thing as signing a paper contract. You don't have to check a little "I agree" box anymore. Just clicking to proceed is your agreement. And here's just how simple that trap is. You see a nice, clean sign-up screen. Somewhere on that page, probably in tiny text, is a little hyperlink to the terms of service. You click Create Account because, well, you want to create an account, and boom, that's it. Legally, you've just agreed to every single word in that document you never even opened. So, what's the big takeaway here? The court basically sent a crystal clear message: we live online now, and you're expected to know the rules of the road. They now judge you based on the standard of a reasonably prudent smartphone user, which is their way of saying, come on, you know that blue underlined text is a link. The burden is now completely on you. Saying I didn't know is just not a difference anymore. Okay, I know, that was a lot. We've talked about massive copyright fines, that creepy federal law about passwords, and these hidden contracts we're all signing. It sounds pretty grim, I get it. But don't panic. Knowledge is power, and it's your best shield. There are simple, concrete things you can do right now to protect yourself. So let's build that digital shield. First off, for content, just make it easy on yourself. Assume everything is copyrighted and stick to the official services. It's the safest move. Second, when you're signing up for something, you don't need to read the 80 pages of legalese. Just look for a summary or key term section. It takes like 30 seconds. Third, remember your work computer is not your personal computer. Know your company's rules because they can enforce them. And finally, yeah, about those passwords, given everything we've just talked about, the safest bet is just to keep them to yourself. When you get right down to it, the problem is actually pretty simple. Our laws are analog, but our lives are digital, and there is a huge, dangerous gap between the two. And until our legal system finally catches up to the 21st century, being aware, knowing these hidden rules is your only real defense. It's what keeps you from becoming an accidental criminal. So we end right back where we started, but now you know a little more. We all use the internet. It's part of our lives. But now that you've had a peek at the hidden pages of the rulebook, the real question is, are you going to change the way you play the game?